Hi, I'm Dawn Jenyce. In this new episode of Authentic Living, I have the pleasure of interviewing the beautiful Rosalyn Rourke. Rosalyn just released a new book, and the title of it is When Wisdom Arrives, From Imagined Unworthiness to Freedom. It went straight to bestseller. Rosalyn's background is incredible. She's extremely intelligent and experienced in the field of mental health. She has a master's degree in social work, worked in mental health and trauma therapy as a psychotherapist. She also worked in the Yale Facilities, specializing in psychiatry. Rosalyn's amazing. The conversation that we have is enlightening to me, and I think you will be enlightened too. And I'm really anxious for you to meet her right now. Here is Rosalyn Rourke. Hi, and welcome to this edition of Authentic Living with Dawn Jenyce. Today, I want to introduce a very special friend of mine. Her name is Rosalyn Rourke. She is a best-selling author, and she's laughing because she just became a best-selling author. If you heard her giggle in the background here, she's an amazing woman who's worked in psychotherapy, in psychology, and she's also worked with Enneagrams. And I'm really interested to talk with you today, Rosalyn. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. And I love what you're doing in your podcast and in your life. It's so exciting and inspiring. And what I love is that it's the niche that you're bringing out that we can all relate to.
Thank you, Rosalyn. It is just easy. Like, you know when you're doing the right thing because it's just easy and it flows. And this just sort of happened. And I'm grateful to be here with all of you that are listening and with you today, Rosalyn. So you and I talked a little bit ago about a topic that I was interested in, and that is overcoming shame and how to go to the other side of it, the absolute opposite side of what shame is.
Mm-hmm.
And you have an interesting perspective on shame.
I do. And just so that it will make sense later, the mysterious title of my book is When Wisdom Arrives, From Imagined Unworthiness to Freedom. And until my daughter unexpectedly died, I would not have probably even bought a book that said Imagined Unworthiness, because I was 100% believer in my own unworthiness. So I just want to put that out for our listeners as a teaser to hanging in there with us so that we can be talking about authenticity and shame as it relates to something other than our personality. Because as we were just saying a few minutes before we got on, what is your personality? What is yourself? Some days it's kind, some days it's generous, some days you're mean, some days you're angry. You know, which one, which self are we being authentic to? But like quantum physics says, there is a field that we all belong to, that we can meet. And it's more of a letting go. And so that's the exercise that I would like to do with you. And I would love our listeners to play along with us.
Well,
Okay.
that sounds great. I'm definitely on board. And
Right.
all of you, please join in and let's experience Rosalyn's work together.
All right. So in the book, there's a fable and then there's a companion memoir. And it was going to be just a fable. And then my editor and I realized, oh my God, not only is this my story, I knew this was my story in fable form, but I did not understand that I had also a wisdom character that came into my life. And so in the fable, the little girl has one of these experiences. So if you get the book, you'll see it again and see what someone else did with these, with this exercise. So we want to start with the idea that thoughts and feelings are changeable. Now, I would have thought that if someone said that, I'm going to feel like I have the same thoughts all day long. But actually, what were you thinking at 8 o'clock this morning?
What was I thinking at 8 o'clock this morning? I was
You don't
thinking,
have to tell me, you just see, like,
yeah,
thoughts and feelings come and go. You're having different thoughts and feelings doing this than you were probably at 8 o'clock. So that's just an intro into, we think our thoughts and feelings are repetitive, and they are repetitive, but they have gone. We've just started again with the same thought. In other words, we picked up, we fed the thought, we began again. But thoughts and feelings are changeable. They're energies. They come and they go. And so this exercise is to give you that experience, and also to question, who is it that we really are? Is it the accumulation of our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors? Or is it something else? And that's what this is about. So when you were 5, do you remember back when you were 5 by any chance?
I remember some moments. Yes.
Okay. So when you were 5, imagine that you played with certain things, you had certain toys. Even if you don't remember the toy, picture what you might have played with. And you've had at least a son. Do you have other children? Just the one son or more?
I had 2 boys.
Two boys. Okay. So you can picture one of your sons or both of your sons at 5, but picture a 5-year-old. What are the kinds of thoughts a 5-year-old has? And listeners, you can think back, feel back into being 5. Maybe you played with a truck. If you're a boy, if you're a girl, maybe you played with a truck. But maybe you played with a doll. Maybe you played with something else. Maybe you climbed trees. And your thoughts and your feelings, just, I won't fill it in this way. Just kind of think of the concerns at 5. Now, when you were 9, you didn't play with the same stuff. You probably had different thoughts because your brain was developing. You're in school. Maybe you had a certain position in your class or a certain position in your family. Let's just feel into being 9 together. Your thoughts were different. Your feelings may have had a root to what they are now, but they're different from when they were 5. And they're a little different, your concerns, from what your concerns are now, right? Is that right?
Definitely.
Do you feel like you were the same Dawn when you were 5 and you were 9, but you had different feelings and different thoughts?
Yes, I would say that's true.
Yeah. So now we can do the same exercise. I don't want to take too much time, but you can see the point. If I took you to 12 and 15, and you, the listener, to 18 and 25, more than likely you've had different thoughts, different feelings, different concerns, different interests, different behaviors. And yet we can pretty quickly tap into, there's something that is continuous about us. And it's almost unnameable. We could try and put words to it, but are you feeling it? That's something without a name.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we're kind of tapping into not an image, not a solid body, because the body changed too, all those years, but you're still you. And I think when you're talking about authenticity and you're talking about what's the opposite of shame, it's tapping into that you that is continuous, that is not your thoughts, that's not your feelings, that's not your behaviors, it's not your conclusions, it's not your image, it's not even your body type, but you're alive. You, at all those ages, you were alive. And you're alive now. And what about you, our listener? That is the one thing we can say, is that we're alive. So that is what I think is the opposite of shame. And that's why shame is just a feeling which we have learned from our culture and habit and repeating. And our culture tells us, improve yourself, become more, succeed, get more, do more, and you'll be more. And that is very shaming. It creates a belief in shame that you're not enough. Be nice. And then if you had a religion, you got some more, a dose of what that was, the morality of that religion. Be this way, be that way. And so all those feelings that we heard in our group, acceptance, compassion, self-love, empathy, they're all changeable. But this continuous feeling, and it's not a feeling because it doesn't come and go. It's continuous. And there are no words. I think that is our embodiment of the divine.
Oh, I think what you just said is beautifully said. And it's something that I've been trying to put into words for several years now. So thank you.
Yeah.
It's and that is the whole premise for what we're doing here on Authentic Living, is coming back to a knowing of who we are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And sometimes I find what we are even more helpful, because when we start with who, then we start to come up, are we kind? Are we loving? Are we this? Are we that? And we're never going to measure up with that. And the reason we're not going to measure up with that is that's all changeable. And we're not static beings. And the outer world, this world that's not a body, that is continuous, is made up of opposites. So it's fine that it's opposite, that we play opposites. We're not happy this moment, we're feeling ashamed. It's just a feeling, it's just a thought. It's not what we are. So we can say it's imagined because of how we feed it, because any of us, if we start in, well, I wasn't good enough in that, whatever, fill in the blank. I wasn't good enough in that meeting, in that performance, in that whatever your work is. And then pretty soon you'll have another idea. I wasn't good enough in that either. And then you'll add to it and you'll add to it. Or you'll try the antidote with these feelings, but it's only temporary. And it's not very popular, but I would say that mindset work that only stays with psychology and only stays with image and be a better person and be better, be kinder, be this, be that, is only going to be temporary. And it's nothing wrong with it. It feels okay, but it's not. When you tap into this continuous thing, and I'm calling it a thing because it's unnameable, but we all know it, we all have it, and we experience it, but we think it's nature, or we think it's music, or we think we zoned out, or we were just in deep sleep, But that's where the relief is, and we crave it. We crave that letting go of the image and the body and the psychology of our success, if you will. How are we doing?
That's fantastic.
Mhm.
I've done a little bit of work on sleep recently and how it connects us to our higher self, or that which is greater, God, whatever we want to call it. Is that what you mean when you work as a oneness coach?
Yes, that's exactly what I mean. And that's why I wanted to start with that exercise. So, because oneness doesn't mean a darn thing if you haven't tapped into what I'm talking about. But oneness, another word for it besides the divine or oneness, um, could be that field, or it could be the matrix. And recently I've enjoyed that word matrix. I haven't seen the movies, and I understand there's a pill and so on. You take this or that. This is like below that, that field that has no separation. But the reason I like the word matrix right now is it's a comeback to all the manifestation. So I know I'm going against what's popular. It's so popular to believe you can manifest things if you just put your mind in the right place and we're that powerful. Well, we're even more powerful than that. But the matrix, the world, that life has the ability to mirror us. And so even when something is not going well, I have a great example. Can I give you an example?
Yes, please.
So I was having a day where things weren't going right. I was being misunderstood, or I was misunderstanding the other. And somebody corrected me a whole bunch of ways in a powerful way. It was like, oh my God, okay. So that went on. We kind of fixed that, but I wasn't back into the oneness yet. And by the way, after suffering, I want to say the most egregious, it doesn't go with it, but it was like someone punched me in the stomach when my daughter died and forgot to take the hand out, like the sock stayed in there. But at a certain point, I was shaken, and it was shaken from the outside. And I knew that I was all right.
Yeah.
And that was because I was back in that field of no personality, but in that, not the separate self, not the one who's achieving or the one who's failing. It was just the okayness, the continuous, do you see that in that continuous that we felt, that we knew, you weren't particularly anything, like you weren't better, you weren't worse, you just were. You were just that aliveness. If we separate from the specific ages and say, what was that was you, that was continuous. So that is what alerted me. So going back to the problems then today it continued. I was on the phone with Apple, and it wasn't working. So I said, oh, the matrix, it's mirroring a residual of when I believed in these things like shame, or not good enough, or somebody's not understanding, or I need some different help. Not enough, lack, that's the ego. So I said, okay, thank you, universe. You're mirroring in everyone that's giving back to me the not good enough. And in the okayness of that, not the fighting of that, not that it's not true, just the welcoming. Oh yeah, it's being mirrored. That is what manifestation is in this framework. You're powerful enough, I'm powerful enough to mirror the dance of what's going on in the outer world. But we don't control life and death in my book. It's not the one who has a higher consciousness that is healthy and the one that isn't, that gets cancer. It's not like that. We don't have that kind of control, but we do have life, and that's enough. We don't have to be the controllers. Matter of fact, that is another answer to shame, is giving up the being good enough. If shame is not true, then being good enough is not true. We just are. So I've been talking too much. Let me give you a chance.
I love what you're saying. I just want to let you go because I'm just soaking it all in. You and I have something in common, and I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but my oldest son Josh died of a brain tumor 2 years ago, and
Oh,
so I'm relating to what you're saying in the experience of thinking that before he passed away, I always thought that I would just melt into the earth and be
yeah,
no more if
yeah.
anything happened tragically to either of my sons. Well, it did. And
Wow.
I'm still here. And
I was aware. Amazing that we've been brought together.
yes, it is. And I was amazed that I was still here. In fact, when people asked me how I was, which is of course the question that they ask, my answer was, I'm still here, meaning surprisingly, I am. Because, motherhood and the connection we have with our children is beyond explanation.
Yes.
Uh, but also, Rosalyn, I watched him die, but he's still here because if I know anything, it is what his energy feels like, because I paid so close attention to that his entire 33 years of his life and before he was born, of course, as we carry that baby.
Yes. And
And
that is the field. That is
yeah,
the oneness. That is what always takes me back. And so you have that too. And I usually don't talk that much about that because people say, oh, you had an awakening experience. You're the lucky one. No, my work now is to have everyone know that that field exists and we're beyond the body. And that's why he's here. That's why my daughter Melissa's here. What's your son's name? What is your son's name?
Josh.
Josh and Melissa are pairing up for this interview.
Yes,
Yeah.
they're here too. So, all right, let's talk a little bit about your book. Congratulations on publishing it, getting it out there, and then almost immediately it hitting the bestseller list. It
I
is
know. It's just so surprising and so fun.
such a wonderful, wonderful thing. And as somebody that's been following you for a while, I'm really not surprised because the work that you do is profound. So what does the title of your book mean? When Wisdom Arrives, from Imagined Unworthiness to Freedom. You've touched on that a little bit. Can we go a little bit deeper?
Yeah. So freedom isn't kumbaya every moment. What it is being fully in life and not being caught by anything that makes you believe in the separate self, if you will. I don't go that far in the book, but I'm going that far with you because that's who you are, what you are, and that's what this is about. So that moment when it wasn't going well, in a second, when I was on with Apple and it wasn't going well and blah, 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 in a second, I returned home. That's freedom. Home is living in that continuous space that's not your body, that's not Josh, that's not Melissa. To me, that's freedom. Freedom from believing in suffering. Suffering is psychological suffering. It's our thoughts and our feelings. It's not what happened to us. Does that make sense? We try to think of it as suffering is the worst and the worst, and that's suffering. No, it's how we think or react to the suffering, to the event, excuse me, whether it makes it suffering or not.
Yes, it does make sense to me. And some profound things have happened in my awareness since my son passed away as I watch myself. And I have this ability, as a lot of people now have learned to do, which is to sort of imagine that I am my higher self looking down on my earthly self.
Mhm.
And there were times when I was reacting in a way that I've watched people react, whether it's people in real life, in my life, or in my past, or television actors, to the death of my son.
Mm.
And it was like my higher self was watching me react that way because I thought that's what I was having to do. That's what I must do. That's what I
Yes,
should
yes,
do.
yes.
Do you know what I'm
That's what
talking about?
culture tells us. That's you have to be distraught. You have to be a mess. Who says that destroying your life shows you loved that person? That's what the society says. If you grieve, if your life is over, then you love that person. What? That makes no sense. Why
Yes,
not live in honor of that person?
I love it. And I'm sure Melissa loved life. Josh did. He thought things were funny and interesting. He didn't react emotionally. He was a very unique
Mhm.
young man that it was like he was only here to observe for 33 years. He was like unique, and we all are. But as his mother, I can see that. And so he wouldn't want me to constantly suffer. And somebody had said to me, if he's living in you now, which is what we say, is like, oh, he's living on through your memories or whatever. I'm not going to make him suffer because he's living in me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
And there is no end. Science says there's no end to where you end and he begins. And it's all just energy. We aren't this solid being. That's what quantum physics tells us. So it proves exactly what you're saying is that his essence is with you, however words you want to describe it. But there is no end to, but it's not the personal. So, I mean, I understand. I was in with the personal for years, and I stood at her picture if I want inspiration or to go straight back to the oneness if I feel I'm not at home. But there was a certain point where she said to me, and I'm an auditory, so I hear things. You could say it's my higher self, or you could say I'm crazy, or you could say it's Melissa. Doesn't matter. But I heard you need to let go of the personal so that you can get something bigger. And as long as I was making it Melissa, I was limiting what I could understand. I couldn't understand this other piece. I wasn't ready to let go of her as my daughter, as a person, as a personality. But the thing is, while I was holding, excuse me, onto that, I was also limiting myself as a personality. I could do less. I could, I could feel less. I could understand less. And so it's been a gift to see her more as the understanding that exists, as the knowing, as the peace that passes all understanding, as the home. Let's call it home, because sometimes your home is cold, sometimes it's too hot, sometimes it's a mess, sometimes it's clean, but there's always, for most people, I've been in icky places and if I was there long enough and they offered me to change, I really didn't want to change because I was kind of at home in that icky place. So there is something about home. I like the words that aren't so personal, like so psychological, so changeable. Um, Anyway,
Yeah, that's beautiful. I'm relating to home as well.
yeah,
It's important to me, and I think it is to most of us.
yeah,
A
yeah.
place where we can just be.
Yeah, and I like your words about transparency and authenticity. And there's another word in there that you use, and it reminds me of taking off too tight shoes when you get home, or a bra if it's too tight if you're a woman, or something else if you're a man. I don't know what men have that might be too tight, but
Yeah.
when you get to get home and let go. Um, Sometimes people take their glasses off even when they can't see as well, just for that freedom.
Mm. Yeah,
I
it's
used to be ties that men wore. They took their tie off
important.
when they.
Very rarely do they wear ties anymore. But that is the truth. That's what I thought it was, ties. I know it's like a surrender to what is. It's like, okay, I'm good with this, you know.
Oh, I love what you said, to what is. Now that's another word, the isness.
Mm.
One of my most important teachings is letting go of a tug of war rope. So what that means is it doesn't mean we agree with what happened, but letting go the fight with what happened. And then people say, well, what about child abuse? What about racism? Well, we're not agreeing with it. So if we're not fighting, we have a new moment to come with all of us. We're not compartmentalized or lost. Like, how much energy do we lose? If you make a fist and make it really tight, everybody join me, make a fist and make it really tight. It starts to be strained. And then when we open up our hands, we have creativity, we have openness, we have a new moment. If there's something for us to do, we can do it. And that's what the little girl learns. We never talked about this, Dawn, you and I. But have you heard of non-duality?
I haven't. Tell me about that.
Well, one of the reasons I wrote the fable was it's a non-dual story, and I'll tell you what that means. It means not to. And it's a mystical tradition in which the direct path is to not get involved with thoughts and feelings that hurt. So step back first as the observer. Now, the first step back, you still care. You still seeing yourself doing whatever that you don't like. You're still in the fight. And then what is it in our being that knows that we're the observer? We can step back into that. And that's closer to this place we've been talking about. And even the word non dual, people glaze over. Nobody can understand it. So I wanted to write something that shows the healing. I don't usually use the word healing because that word implies there's something wrong with you that then gets healed. But the transformation, the coming back to our beingness, and the little girl has these games that the wisdom character plays with her, but I don't use any non-dual language so that everybody can understand it more, because you use the word awareness, they use it with a capital A, meaning this beingness, not my awareness, not the personal. It takes it back, back, back into the beingness that we were getting to with the ages. Like, what is it in that's life, that is continuous, that is me, that is you? It's like a flower is always its certain embodiment, but it's life, and it gets different things from the universe depending on where it is and where the energies are, and its experiences are different. So we are real, but we're not these solid separate people, is the understanding of non-duality.
Oh
So
my
it,
gosh. That is phenomenal. I need more. I need more of that.
So there, at the end of the book, there are questions and answers because it's really more of a teaching memoir. So, people say at the end, well, that's a cute story, but what about my life? And so we try to answer that in the different ways it's possible. Yeah.
Well, your book is on its way to my house. I was bummed I didn't have it to hold up today. Hopefully you have a copy. So
I'll hold it up. I got it here.
yeah,
Here we go.
there it is.
So the cover, and you see these people behind in a vague way, they're the ancestors, because the little girl, as well as for my life, there have been generations of mothers that have been very, I want to say, rejecting, very critical of their daughter's size. And even the grandmother who was going through the Nazis had her daughter running around the streets to lose weight. And we know about epigenesis now and carrying the stories down in our genes. But in case a reader has not heard of this, it can be changed. If you take a different behavior and attitude, everything has to change, not just the behavior. The genes change as well.
Wow.
So it's very exciting. But these are the ancestors behind. So I love the cover, and I got to work with the most marvelous illustrator. So his name is on the cover and on the title page, because the pictures, I think, tell the story just as well as the words. So I got very, very lucky. But that's what I mean, is that life gives you what you need if you stop being the personal self. That makes no sense, I understand. But if you let go and let life give you and go where the impulse is, you had a very similar experience. I could tell, say more of what that was, when you could tell people wanted you to have one story and it wasn't yours. Exactly.
So we're talking about the experience when my son passed away. Yes. Yes. So everybody asks, well, some people just stay away because they don't know what to say or do, and they're afraid to do the wrong thing. And I get that, because I used to be that person, because I didn't know what to do. And please don't stay away. Please come into our world. We all need each other. Even
and talk about the person. People are afraid to talk about the person.
yes.
And we want to talk about the person always. We don't want the person to be a non-subject.
No, we want who they have been on this earth to live on, and for people to remember them, for everybody, for the world too. And I know that's anybody that's lost somebody important in their life knows this, but also just by showing up, and you don't have to do or say anything, just be, we just being.
Just say, I'm here for you. I'm here for you. Tell me what you need, or I'll just be here.
Just soul to soul, just knowing that you're
cry with us. Cry with us. If you feel like crying, cry with us.
Or laugh.
If you don't feel like crying, hold us. If you ask us what we need, but mean it. Don't just say, can I do anything for you? Can I bring you a dinner? No, that's not it.
Yeah, it's not a doing, it's a being. And that's one of the biggest things I learned when my son passed away. And that's why I changed my tagline from "because you have more to do" to "because you have more to be."
Oh, yay. Fantastic. I love it. Love it. Love it. Yes.
So, but this isn't about me. This is about you, Rosalyn, today. I want to learn more about you. But to answer your question briefly, yeah, people in my life that are my good friends want me to continue on and to shine and to live my life fully, because my cousin did say one thing to me. He called me. I rarely see him. He's been in the military for years. And he called me, which is brave all by itself, to call a grieving mother. And he called me to give me his condolences, to say, I don't know the right thing to say. And then at the very end of the conversation, he said, take care of yourself, Dawn, because we need you.
Oh, oh, now that could make me cry right there.
And
Yeah,
that
yeah.
was the right thing to say to me at that moment. And I
Mm-hmm.
told him that. I said, you just said the right thing, Chris. That's my cousin. If you're listening out there, Chris, thank you. Because it made me realize that my life is also important to go on. I have another son. I have other people in my life. I have a life to live as well. So I'm really blessed to have people in my life that see that in me and are encouraging me to do that. So that's what that's about.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
what is the reason that you wrote this lovely book?
Well, you actually transitioned right into it for me with your story about what your experience was with Chris on the phone. Um, when I was shaken and I realized I was all right, first I said, where did the suffering go? Because I mean, I could feel that I could bring it back. I remembered it. She was still dead. But then I said, can I admit this, that I'm all right? I knew you would understand. I can see it in your face. I knew you would understand because there is that social custom that you stay in black. I mean, if somebody is in black for 10 years, you admire them like, oh, they must have loved their daughter. Like that's the way I give up my life. And that means I loved her. No, that made me, I guess I'm a kind of a rule breaker and need to say what's believed but is not true. So there is such a difference in understanding that beliefs are just thoughts, feelings, and memories. That doesn't make them true. And so it was the beginning of feeling like I needed to go against that taboo. And a dear friend of mine who's a Course in Miracles, a teacher of a big with a big following, big courses, asked me if I wanted to lead a grief group. And it was great because she was the first person after I made this decision that I'm not going to follow the taboo against being one with all, even her death. And I said, well, I'm not in grief. I can't say that I don't have feelings of pain, but I'm not in the stages of grief because I refuse to hold on to the feelings as though they're a stage. That means I'm going to feel like you're saying, I am depressed. That is not who I am. I can have a feeling of being down. I can hurt. I can have a memory. Most of my nostalgia did not work for me because I saw it always ended and I can't have that anymore. It's no longer. So I didn't go there unless it was something like Melissa loved dogs. I can remember that. It doesn't hurt because if she were alive, she'd still love dogs or wherever if there is an essence of Melissa, it's in dog, whatever. That's not, but it's when it was like, when there won't be any more Christmases with her or whatever. I just didn't let myself go there. And because I had been in such intense suffering before I had this shaking moment, I knew in a second which path would hurt and which path was freedom. It was just really easy to keep choosing freedom. And I don't think there's a choosing. I think you say, why did I write the book? I was given this purpose to speak this way, to know what I know, to have this experience, that it's all right in the sense of the oneness that she died. And I had to come to terms with the word death. I was used to say passed on, made her transition, words that showed what I believed. But I had to come to terms with death because that's what the world says. And it is death of the body. So I needed to get comfortable with that. I guess I just want to open it up to people that are in stages of grief, take away the taboo and say, I know it hurts. And some days you actually feel guilty because you're happy. And whatever you're feeling, that's still part of whatever. But feelings come and go. We know from science that in 90 seconds, if you don't feed the last thought, you're going to have a new thought. And the little girl in the story, she gets told this information that I'm sharing with you today, but she's a real fighter, and she goes, that doesn't sound like a gift. So she fights back, and so there's some good conversations. But she says 90 seconds is much longer than I thought. Start counting it, So, and the looping that we do, observing. Even if you don't choose as a listener another way, watch yourself loop. Watch yourself if you feed the last thought with another thought just like it. And that awareness will build and can offer you at some point, let me see, what if I don't feed that? What if I take a little distance, step back into that beingness of the what I was when we did the ages? That wasn't a personal self. It was something continuous.
So the word quantum physics has been used a lot in the last 20 years out in this sort of world that you and I live in and work in. And I'm not sure that I really truly understand all that quantum physics is. I have an idea. And of course, I watched The Secret way back when. I started listening to, Dr. Joe Dispenza for sure recently. And could you explain how the teachings of your book fit in and what quantum physics means to what you teach?
So I too am not a scientist, and I really have no interest in knowing more scientifically, about cells and atoms and all of that. What interests me is, let me read the Rumi quote that's at the beginning of my book, because Rumi was the 13th century poet. Do you know him? Yes?
Love Rumi. Yes.
You love Rumi. Great. And it's the quote that most people have heard of. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there.
Oh.
And that's at the introduction of my book. And that's what this means to me. It means I get to be with Melissa. You get to be with Josh. We don't have to explain it. We don't have to say, defend it. This is the truth, that there is just an energy field. And then it gets localized into a person. So that's what you and I appear solid. Our eyes and our perceptions are that we see something solid. But science says there is nothing solid. It's just this field. Well, we don't impose or superimpose on a flower or a tree. We know that trees talk to each other, but we don't say they're a person. It's not that we're not alive and that we don't look different, but we've superimposed features and traits and image. This is all the thinking creative mind, and it's powerful, but it's not ultimate. The mind is not the absolute. So that's where I think manifestation, it is it can be hurtful to people. They can think all these horrible things. Am I not? Because if you manifested, I manifested, she manifested all these wonderful things, then you're to blame for all the bad things. And so that's, you can play in the world. It's like we have a mind. We are creative. And so I like that term that I mentioned, that the matrix will mirror your consciousness. So yeah, you can get a car but how do you actually know that you, the separate you, thought of that car and then got the car? What if life wanted you to have that car, gave you the thought, and then you manifested, quote unquote? If you don't believe in a separate self, then there's no manifestation. They go together. You can't have it in one area and then let go control in another area because it hurts. So if you work with someone in the Far East, in 1995, I went to India, and he was a non-dual teacher that loved working with Western psychotherapists. And so I was over there, and he said, in the West, you love goals, you love the separate self, and you get high on it. But he said, you don't notice that it's that same separate self that hurts you when you didn't get that goal. And the goal is actually describing what you think you lack. There's the important part. There's a belief in lack, and you got to get these things, you got to manifest them. And that is not true any more than shame is true. That's why I said imagined unworthiness. And I get it. We're all going to treat each other like you're Dawn and I'm me. But if we believe that that's the play world, like a movie, when you watch a really great movie, you cry, you love the characters, you're in full on in. But it's a movie. And now you're going to go back to life, not the dramas, but the breathing, the body that's just your manifestation, if you will, or your embodiment of the divine. It's only the divine. And that never has an opposite. You know, if you go back to that as home, and it's hard to think of us as the divine because we're so conditioned to look at our behavior, our thoughts, and our feelings as us. But if we're just life, if the divine is life, then I think that's an entryway for some people.
Wow. Wow. What a great last word to end with right there. Rosalyn, you are a gem. You are a gift. And I want to talk to you more about more things. Would you be willing to come back and do another episode?
I would love to come back. This is a great opportunity. You've made it possible for me to say everything, no holds barred.
Awesome. I love that. And there's so much more I want to talk to you about. So stay tuned because Rosalyn will be back. And I want to thank you so much for being here with us today, Rosalyn Rourke. The name of her book, again, is When Wisdom Arrives, From Imagined Unworthiness to Freedom. It's available now on Amazon. It's a bestseller. Get your copy today before they're sold out.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Bye.
All right, everybody. We'll see you next time on Authentic Living with Dawn Jenyce.